Welcome to the final explainer of the Jack-Up Rig Move Operations training series. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're distilling the absolutely crucial learning points from all 7 of our previous episodes to consolidate the exact procedures you need to nail down your series completion certification. Over our journey together, we followed a jack-up rig from its elevated departure point through the incredibly perilous transit phase, all the way to a safe landing at a new drilling site. Now we're going to review the heavy hitters. We're talking about the life or death decision points that have historically caused total rig losses when ignored, and literally saved lives when properly understood. Okay, let's take a quick look at our agenda. We're mapping out the chronological journey here, starting with the vulnerable rig, moving into preparation and extraction, then transit and weather decisions, arrival and emergency control, the human element, and finally, your certification assessment. All right, Section 1, the vulnerable rig. Understanding the core tension. To kick things off, we really have to wrap our heads around the sheer paradox of a jack-up rig. It's wild when you think about it. When it's elevated, it is an incredibly stable offshore platform. But the moment it's afloat, that low freeboard and all those internal compartment openings make it highly, highly vulnerable. In the water, it takes on extreme dynamic forces on the hull and leg structures from wave motion. And honestly, that is exactly why more rigs are lost during towing and transit than in any other phase of their entire operating life. Section 2, Preparation and Extraction, the first links in the chain. So getting into this phase, you have to remember our golden rule. A preparation failure at the dock cannot be fixed at sea. If you don't physically inspect every single hatch, or if you don't aggressively secure the deck cargo, disaster is literally just one bad wave away. Think about it. A single loose item rolling across a pitching deck can tear right through a ventilator trunk and kick off progressive flooding. And listen, a quick visual check of a hatch from the wheelhouse, not gonna cut it. You have to physically put your hands on the closure to know for sure it's watertight. Oh, and absolutely do not forget to switch that cooling system over to the internal sea chests before the hull ever hits the waterline during jacking down. Now, during the extraction phase, there's this critical danger known as overpull. I know it's incredibly tempting to just use the raw, massive power of the jacking machinery to yank a stuck spud can out of the mud. But applying excessive upward jacking force before a spud can is completely free is a huge mistake. It will cause severe structural damage to the leg, the jacking machinery itself, and the guide structure. So, keeping the danger of overpull in mind, here's a question straight out of your final assessment. Ask yourself right now, how do we properly deal with deep spuds con penetration? Take a second and lock in your answer. Got it. You have to use the high-pressure jetting system to break that mud suction, instead of relying on raw force. It pumps high-pressure water right through the piping in the legs, down to nozzles on the spud cans to liquefy the surrounding soil. Patience here is absolutely crucial. Let the system do its job, and you prevent catastrophic damage to your rig. Moving on to Section 3, Transit and Weather Decisions. Navigating the safety envelope. All right, we're casting off into the open water transit phase, which means the rig is now a vessel and at its most vulnerable. Here's another really high-value test question for you. Why can't we just leave the massive legs unsecured while the rig is moving? Well, if you don't physically lock them in with wedges or rack chocks, those heavy legs are going to violently pound against their guides with every wave. That causes rapid, progressive structural failure. The sheer momentum of those towers swaying back and forth will literally tear the rig apart from the inside out. During transit, the towmaster has to constantly keep an eye on 3 big environmental parameters: wind speed, significant wave height, and vessel motion. And let me be clear, their authority on this is absolute. Commercial pressure can never, ever override these engineering limits. Even if a client is pushing hard to proceed to save a few bucks, if the weather exceeds transit criteria, the answer is a hard no. These are strict engineering limits, not just friendly suggestions. Speaking of which, you are absolutely going to see significant wave height, or HS, on the exam. Just remember, it is not the highest single wave out there, and it's not the average of all the waves either. It is specifically defined as the average height of the highest 1/3 of waves in a given sea state. So, what do we actually do with that weather data? Well, if your steaming time to a standby location is longer than your remaining weather window, you must divert immediately. Waiting around to see if things get worse is already way too late. That's why a standby location has to be pre-identified. The towmaster needs a calculated divert option ready to go. You simply can't afford to be making rapid, panicky decisions when the weather is already deteriorating around you. Section 4, Arrival and Emergency Control. the last line of defense. Now we have to confront the harsh reality of progressive flooding. Because it's nonlinear and accelerates incredibly fast, you definitely need to know the answer to this critical assessment question. How frequently are we checking our bilges during a rig move? You are checking them every single hour, without exception. That is your only early warning system that flooding is happening. If a patrol crew member notices a sounding has risen significantly since the previous hour, they have to report it to the towmaster immediately. Early detection is literally the only margin of safety you have against a total loss. And if the worst does happen, standard bilge pumps are pretty much useless for significant marine flooding. That's why you have to pre-adapt high-capacity pumps, like your cement slurry recirculation pump, and pre-rig your emergency tow lines. You absolutely cannot safely improvise these things during a storm. Just imagine trying to drag massive tow lines across a violently pitching deck in hurricane-force winds. Yeah, no way. You prepare at the dock, or you don't prepare at all. Once you finally arrive at the new site, execution has to be extremely precise. You can't just rely on tidal predictions. You have to confirm the actual tidal stream direction and speed. Then, verify the vessel motion is within limits. If the hull is heaving too much, you suspend leg lowering immediately and wait. Lower the legs slowly because excessive heave during a hard seabed impact will transmit a devastating amount of force right into the rig and instantly destroy your spud cans. Section 5. The human element, the chain of survival. Everything we've talked about is connected. Preparation, extraction, transit, and arrival. Every single phase depends entirely on the one before it. A rushed step during preparation will inevitably create a fatal emergency during transit. Transit errors create arrival nightmares. The entire operation is only as strong as its weakest link, and 99% of the time that weak link is a step the crew assumed, rushed, or just skipped entirely. I love this quote from oilfield seamanship author M. Hancox because it really hits the nail on the head. Engineered hardware is fantastic, but it's not going to notice a loose hatch, and it definitely won't stop a client from pressuring you to sail in terrible weather. At the end of the day, safety relies entirely on the rational decision-making and continuous vigilance of you and your marine crew. All right, Section 6, Final Certification Assessment, Proving Competency. It is finally time to put all this knowledge to the test. Here's the deal. You have 30 minutes to complete 20 questions, and you need a solid 80%, so 16 correct answers to pass. You know the mechanics now. You know the environmental limits, and you understand the immense responsibility resting on your shoulders. So when the weather turns bad and the pressure starts mounting, will you be the weak link or will your decisions save the rig? Good luck on your final assessment.